Hi, you guys. Well, let's see. I don't know if I can do these without the glasses because these are my cheap reading glasses. But I want to talk to you a little bit about, I got asked some questions by one of my students. And these questions weren't necessarily her questions because she's been in the yoga world a while, but they were questions that she was interested in. Now, this person is in my 300-hour training, and so these questions I answer in 200-hour training, and I want to give you some information if you're looking for business information. So my book is called The Mud and the Lotus, a guide and a workbook for yoga teachers. And everything I have talked about in these last 3 videos is in that book. You can buy it on Amazon or at alyapress.com. I'll leave it in the notes below. I also would recommend the book Stretched by Karen Fabian and also Larry Payne's book, The Business of Yoga. So all of those are great books, and there's a lot now online that you can find. The Connected Yoga Teacher is a great place. It's a podcast. I highly recommend it. There is a workshop coming up. If you're seeing this before the middle of February in 2019, there's a workshop coming up in Little Rock called WOW, Weekend of Workshops. And there's a whole section on business and social media by Rena Wren. You can see that at renawren.com. So these final questions I'm answering, and a lot of this, if you'll go back in my material, is free on YouTube. Much of what I say in the book, I have a YouTube video about it. However, in the book, I go into great detail and it's organized. And the workbook was really meant, and I'm sorry, I left that door open. I've been working. I totally forgot. The workbook is done in a way that helps you figure out your own certain needs. Because let's say a mother who is teaching yoga part-time and taking care of the kids part-time while her husband works full-time, and her only goal is to get out of the house and make a little bit of extra money to have fun money with the kids and grocery money. That's a whole different scenario than a single mom who needs to earn a living and wants to earn a living teaching yoga, or a young male college student who wants to teach yoga and go to college. So I'm going to talk to you about some ways to make money teaching yoga. And it's so varied. I've done so much in the yoga world in my career. And sorry, guys, I'm short of breath. I have a little bit of a heart issue. I just found out, and that's why I get short of breath. Unfortunately, I was born with it, so sometimes I just have to stop, take a deep breath. But I'm okay. So I've done so many things in the yoga world, but my life has changed over the course of my yoga career. And I think what has made me very successful, in the sense that, yes, I have made a full-time career out of yoga, has been my consistency to stay focused. I have stayed focused. When I get a class, or when I have committed to a class, 90% of those classes, if they worked out after 3 months, I stuck to them for years. I taught the same classes for years. In some instances, let's see, I was at the college for 10 years. I was at a gym for 5 years. I was at another gym, large nonprofit, for 5 years as well. So I just had that consistency. Now, back when I was a married mother and I just needed to make some extra money to help support our household, because I had 4 kids, it didn't make sense for me to work full time. So I worked part-time teaching yoga, and the lowest I ever made was like $300 a month. And, I was making anywhere from, I think I started out at about $23 a class, and that was about 20 years ago. That's pretty good because a lot of people aren't making that now. I would never accept less than that. Just wouldn't teach for less than that. Now, if a situation came up where I was teaching and being paid by the student, which also wouldn't accept that, yes, I would do due diligence and teach that one person and treat them special. But let me tell you some things I've done. I have worked at a nonprofit, the Y, and I was there for 5 years. I actually developed their yoga program from scratch. They did not have one. And I had a school at that time. I moved my school there, and I ran my school there, and I trained all of their teachers. I actually created a position for myself and worked for free for about 5 months. And then they started paying me for this position. And I created a position called the yoga director because we went from 0 classes to me building a program with 16 classes that were very successful. And I did such a good job with that when they needed someone to have an admin position, which was the fitness director, they put me in charge. And then I was the fitness director of over 60 classes a week. I don't remember how many employees were under me because it was a lot. 60 classes, all those teachers. And I was in charge of hiring, firing, making sure they had all their paperwork in, making sure they were doing their job. I was in charge of all the schedules, the descriptions. It was quite a job, and it was quite a thankless job. I've worked at just gyms, large and small, and yoga studios. I helped open a yoga studio, and then I owned my own yoga studio for a couple of years. I've worked at a college in academia. I started out working what they call community education classes, and that's a great way to get started. If you are interested in doing that, I would call your local college or community college and see if you could offer community education or continuing education. That is a wonderful way to get started, and I made really good money doing that. I've worked at local churches. I've taught classes in churches. I have taught private classes for individuals and small groups, yoga parties, things like that. I didn't mind having yoga parties in my studio, but I didn't really care for going to teach groups of people because it was so chaotic. Um, I've taught lots and lots of yoga workshops, like over 100. I have done yoga intensives before I was teaching workshops. Well, I've actually been the host for those. I've helped people do those. That wasn't a thing when I started out. It is a thing now. It's like a mini workshop. I've also owned a school for 10 years. I do not know how many schools I've had at this point, how many classes. I know it's probably around 20. I've had yoga coaching or private yoga therapy practice where I actually had an office and I saw people in my office. And I have taught online course. I haven't taught online courses, but I have a heavy online presence. But that is something I'm looking into doing. I've also written a book. And let me tell you about the money associated with each of these. And then let's talk about how much and what is full-time as yoga, because full-time doesn't necessarily mean 40 hours a week with yoga, because you can't quantify when you're going from class to class to class as like a 40-hour job. It doesn't work like that because of scheduling. I would consider full-time yoga 10 classes a week about, okay? And that's going to be about $500 a week average when you average out the $25 classes and the private classes. That's just a rough estimate. It could be more, it could be less depending on your area. So let's talk about what that looks like. I teach 6 classes a week right now, and I have told the office that I will take up to 3 more probably, but I probably won't do more than that. But I also have to medically chart. So I'm a medical yoga therapist, and I'm going to address this to teachers because I don't think I'm reaching out to a lot of yoga therapists out there. But if you are and you have questions, just ask me below or private message me and I'll get to you. All right. So in the classes, teaching public classes, which I've done for years, I just quit teaching public classes about a year ago. I made around $25 to $35 an hour, upwards of $50 an hour. That was in the gyms and the nonprofit world. As an administrator, I was only making about $15 an hour, working 20 hours a week. So that was another like $300. I don't even know if I made that much. I want to say, yeah, I made like $1,000 a month. And then I had my check on top of that for classes, and I was teaching like 3 classes a week. And I was making $50 a class. So, and I was the highest paid, but I was also the director. So I was, making around $1,600 to $1,800 a month doing that. At the yoga studio, I was generally making about 25 to 35 a class. At the college, and that's me working for someone else. At the college, I made it ended up being around 50 a class when you added it all up. And it was a good gig and it was consistent. So I would go in and I would teach 2 2-hour classes and I would make about $150 to $200 a day. Churches, that was kind of hit or miss. Those were kind of just, I might charge 10 people. This is way back when I started teaching. It was cheaper. Like 10 people may pay me $8. And so I would make $80 and they did not charge me rent. Private classes, I charge anywhere from $50 to $100 a session. And a session might be more than an hour, but no more than 2 hours. So you can see kind of a trend here around the $50 mark, but I have a lot of experience. Now, I'm in the rural South, and to be honest with you, I'm probably way, way underpriced because people that I have trained and taught are charging double than me, and maybe that's my bad. I think it really depends on the area you are and what the economic circumstances of that area are and what you feel good about charging, because I tended to lean towards people with special needs and a lot of problems, physical problems, emotional problems. And I knew that a lot of these situations, they just couldn't afford it. So I kind of found a middle ground that made me feel comfortable, where I wouldn't feel resentful, but yet I would also feel like I wasn't outpricing myself so that people who really needed it couldn't afford me. In yoga workshops, intensives, and schools, it varies, but I kind of had a round number of I wouldn't do less than 10 people in a workshop. And I generally priced my workshops at about $15 an hour per person. So if I was going to do like a mini workshop and it was 2 hours, it's going to be around $30. Now I'm probably going to charge a little more, but 5-6 years ago. So $30 times 10 people was $300 minus your expenses. And, I would recommend, if you've been teaching for a while, reach out to your current clientele and start offering some little mini workshops. And then maybe you're going to try a whole day, but start with a half a day or a small one or a yoga day. And the Business of Yoga by Larry Payne has some really good information on yoga days. I also have written extensively about that in my book that's coming out. If you're my student, you have it for free in your email. So look, it's called How to Put on Yoga Events, Workshops, and Retreats. And that's my new ebook, and it goes into detail about all of this. Owning a school, I think a lot of people think a school is a big moneymaker, and it is to some degree, but the work is very intense. I don't think people realize how much work it goes into it to have a good school. I think there are a lot of schools out there that don't put a lot of work into it, and their schools reflect that in their quality of their teachers. I think a lot of people go into it thinking it's easy and they just kind of halfway do it. I think that's been the secret to my success and why I have trained over 225 people this year in 10 years, because I really take care of my people. I mean, I was packing tonight. I have training this weekend. I packed tea. I packed snacks. I went through all my books for one of my students to give her some books to borrow. I mean, I really try to give extra special attention to all my teachers. I have a phone call or time with each of my teachers individually. I did have to develop curriculum, send emails, market. I mean, it's a business, y'all. And so I would say on a yoga school, on average, I know a lot of people go, well, you're charging, it's not $3,000, but we'll say 3,000 times 10 people. That's, $30,000. But actually, after you take taxes out, which is going to be around $6,000, then you're going to, and you pay your rent and you pay all of your expenses. My average return on the investment is anywhere from 33 to about 60%. So you can consider that you're making anywhere from about half of what you collect. So you have to be really diligent with your bookkeeping. All right, because you're going to pay credentialing fees, accountants, taxes, all of that. And I do my business right, and maybe it's more expensive, but I think that's been the secret to my success. So doing coaching, online courses, and ebooks. I'm not an expert in that. I'm still learning, but there's a ton of information out there, and I don't want to take up much more of this video with trying to tell you about how to do that when I don't even understand it myself. I published a book with a publishing company, and at this time I'm trying to work on an ebook. So I'll let you know in a later video. So how much do you need to make? That's really the question, because your lifestyle and how much you need to make depends on what full-time yoga is for you. If you can get to a situation where you have about 10 hours a week that you're actually working with people and you're averaging $50 an hour, can you live on $2,000 a month, $24,000? Do you have another source of income coming in? Or could you take a job in the yoga field that wasn't necessarily a yoga teacher like I did as a yoga director? Could you work the front desk at a yoga studio? Maybe you want to open a small yoga studio. That wasn't super, I wasn't super profitable with the yoga studio. I don't think a lot of people are. And I invested about 20,000 of my hard-earned savings into opening it. And then they wanted to close the building. It's a long story. It had family ties. But I basically was making about $600 a month profit. And at the end of the day, financially, the yoga studio wasn't worth it. And honestly, I felt married to it, and I didn't like it. But some people do really well with it. But it's, it gets a lot of glamour and attention, but it's not all that, trust me. So you have to really decide, like, how much do I need to make? Because if you need to make $50,000 a year, you're probably going to have to put 15 years into a yoga career to do that and work your ass off. Now, I'm going to be honest, some people you see who do really, really well and are making thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, that's really, really rare. So depending on how much you need in your circumstances is going to depend on what you need in your lifestyle. So I think that you can make about 20 to 24,000 after about 5 years of working steadily, but it's going to take some time. My book has a ton of information on this. You feel free to ask me more questions. Have a beautiful day, y'all. Thank you. Like, subscribe.